Good afternoon and welcome to the Laughing Monkey Music Show. Today we have on Randy McStine. How are you?
Good man, how are you?
Good. As we were talking earlier and I break the fourth wall, I have been introduced to your work backwards through Marco and the two albums you have done. But you got a lot going on. You got a lot of solo stuff out. You're getting ready to don't do the tour or do some stuff with Porcupine Tree.
Yeah, we've got the big tour coming up in the fall.
Right. Before we go there, we can go there towards the end. Let's talk about your solo stuff because you have a lot. You have a great body of stuff, and it's on Bandcamp, and I'll put the link there. I want people to check it out. And you pretty much do a
Sure.
lot of pretty much your own stuff anyhow on Bandcamp. It's pretty much just you, right?
Yeah. I mean, I run the page, and yeah, there's a lot of stuff on there actually.
There's a real lot. It's good. It's interactive. I mean, it's up to date. Sometimes it becomes a ghost town.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like what was that other thing we used to go on all the time? It's not even around anymore. Yeah, MySpace. Like yeah, like well, that place like MySpace becomes like a ghost town. Like so nowadays, somebody starts a social media page and then they just walk away from it. It just sits there for like 5 years. New tour coming out in 2017.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so
It's funny with MySpace, like because I've every once in a while I've had this fantasy of like, oh, maybe I'll just put up a random page on MySpace now and see if people find it.
that would be
But
hilarious.
for in the early to mid 2000s, I mean, that was the place to
It
be.
was.
Uh,
It seemed weird though to me, like the way it was put together. I never
yeah,
got into it until even in computers until like Mac started really getting good. Because to me, it felt like MySpace felt like it was like cut and paste, like a serial killer is going to write you a letter and they're cutting out the letters. Like the way the template and the form was, it just felt so juvenile to me. Like I didn't feel like it was like
yeah.
to where I liked my visuals.
I hear you. I hear you.
So,
Yeah.
but as an artist, it's good. That would be good to have an artist go back. Like have a really huge artist just go back, like Britney Spears, and just do everything on MySpace.
Yeah. Exclusive.
That'd be
Exclusive.
pretty funny. So let's talk about you. I mean, what would you generally say your music is? I mean, I listen to it. It's very eclectic.
It's a
Um,
good word for it, I suppose. Well, it depends on how much digging you want to do, because there are some things that are not on my Bandcamp page that
mhm.
predate what I have there. I've basically started my what I would call my music career phase two in 2010 with the release of a project called Lo-Fi Resistance and an album
Yep.
called Deep Breath. But prior to that, I had done three instrumental solo records, which were independently released prior to me even singing, basically. And then there was this transitional phase where I started to sing and started to write songs with lyrics. And the trio that I had at the time from about 2003 to 2006, we recorded more than an album's worth of songs that just people who might still have the CDRs from then when we used to just burn them for shows.
Yep.
But that's about it. I haven't released that stuff officially. Maybe one day I will, just out of curiosity. But so my
I'd be
point
interested
here,
in it because I've heard your other stuff. I've listened to all your other stuff, so I'd be curious to
yeah,
see it out there.
yeah. But in the 2010 to 2022, basically, I've just really just done a lot of exploring. I'm just such a music nerd in that way, and I really like the idea of pushing myself into new territory.
Right.
So I think that's where the eclectic thing happens. It's not like I made a conscious decision to
Right.
to make as you know much
Yeah.
diverse music as possible. I think I've just sort of followed my
It
my
makes
whims.
sense,
Yeah,
because it feels because there is, and I say whenever people think of prog back in the day, it would be like it's just this John Lord keyboard and something else, and it was whatever. And I love that stuff. I've got a million Yes albums and Deep Purple albums.
me
But
too.
nowadays, prog a little more expansive, and it almost feels like the more you go out there, it could be, because with Marco, you guys are aristocrats. You're getting jazz, you're getting this, and you go back. It's not totally jazz, but you get the feeling. Next thing you know, it can be like heavy type of metal, but then it's not. It's progressive. It's just prog rock to me. It's just smart music that takes you on a journey, I guess, because it goes anywhere. There's no,
Sure.
you know what I mean, style.
Yeah, that's another one of those loaded sort of topics because uh, you could find any internet forum about progressive rock where people are endlessly bickering on what it means to be progressive or to be
Yep.
prog. I've always been more of a fan of the ideal of being progressive rather than it being like a very restrictive sort of
I
genre
agree. Yeah.
where you're ticking all the boxes, and I love all that stuff too. Give me a Mellotron and I'm happy. But
But you know what I'm saying? But prog rock is to me is
yeah,
something that goes everywhere. It doesn't lock into one genre, and it's
for
pretty
sure.
smart in the recording and the songwriting of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the McStine and Minnemann records, both of which we did in 2020, and we are working on a third one
Oh, excellent.
right now. Uh, in a lot of ways, those two records, although I wouldn't call them progressive rock, they kind of, I think they're the vision of what I largely view as my the way that I filter all of those
Hmm.
influences. I feel like Marco and I have put our music collections into those two records in a way that I would be happy to hand those albums to somebody. Especially the second one is incredibly eclectic for me, anyways. And I think McStine and Minnemann too is probably one of the closest visions to like how I want to hear progressive music.
Okay, I can hear that.
Just in terms of where it's willing to go and the ability to sort of bounce between genres, but not as a cliche or like a sort of parody of genre. Just
I
like
know what you're
I
saying. It
yeah,
feels like where the song needs to go. That's kind. It's
yeah,
like it's to me, progressive rock is it's you're writing a song and it goes where it has to go. Does it have jazz chords in it? Is it next thing you know? Is it going to be fast? Is it going to go slow again? Is there a Beatles-esque melody and then you're back to a threat? I mean, it's where your song you feel as an artist needs to go.
yeah, yeah,
And usually there's some really smart phrasing and arrangements in it too. That if you're playing it as a musician, you're like, what the heck?
yeah,
Every
yeah,
now and then you get that too in a good frog song. You're like, what the?
for sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't. It's. I think it's kind of a thing, probably for a lot of people, where when I write something, I'm just it feels good to me. I'm not thinking about how complicated it is or
Right,
not. It may hit somebody else's ear as a complicated thing, but it's completely natural
right.
if I've written it. But then Marco brings in something, and I'm like, so it all depends on the context.
How do you
Yeah,
guys do that? Because he also plays like well, every instrument he touches.
it does. Yeah.
So and you got your hands on a lot of stuff too, though. So it's not you're not shabby yourself, and obviously you're a fantastic guitar player too. How do you find out the balance? Because when I spoke to him about songwriting in the Aristocrats, it's kind of like they all kind of each bring in a couple songs each, and it feels weird to me. I'm like, wouldn't it be weird to tell somebody like the other members of the band who are like also the best at what they do? Here's a
Right.
guitar line for you. I'd be like, oh, but so like, how does that work for you guys when you guys write?
Well, so far it has been somewhat similar to the Aristocrats
Oh, really?
approach. So in the sense that we haven't yet done many technical co-writes. There's only been a few, but the project was sort of founded on the idea that I would bring a couple of songs to the table, he would bring a couple, and we would kind of just filter it through each other
Flesh it out. Yeah.
and see how it is. So I'm generalizing here, but I would say when I write a song for McStine and Minnemann, well, both of us pretty much produce the songs that we've written in a close to final state
Yeah.
as we see it. So a lot of times the things I write, when I present it to Marco, it's a full on production, and the only thing that it technically needs is him to replace my program drums, and
Right.
then that's his main contribution to my tunes. But because he is such a prolific instrumentalist and arranger and writer himself, there are many times where he'll pick up a guitar, add some extra layers, add some extra keyboard parts, and that's generally what happens with my songs. With his tunes, he really gets he can really go out there in a way that I don't naturally, just because his brain and the way he processes music is just on a completely different level from myself.
Most people.
Yeah, yeah, it's remarkable. So when he sends a song and he's got it, lyrics, melodies, all that kind of stuff, it usually takes me a little while to kind of sit with it and find my roadmap, because ultimately I'm the one who's going to end up singing it.
Mm-hmm.
And when we play live, playing the main guitar part. So I sort of like deconstruct it. You know, I get all the tracks in and I kind of isolate things and listen to what's going on. And to his credit, he really trusts that when I present, you know, my version of his song my version of his song back to him, I will have really put my producer cap on and kind of, you know, I'm given free rein to make it my own, essentially. And song after song, it's worked in a way that he, really trusts what I do, and we have such a strong mutual respect for one another. I think that's how it kind of comes out as McStine and Minnemann music. You know, if we're coming from extreme poles and he's able to take it way out, and sometimes I want it to be a little bit more grounded, let's say. I think we have a great way of pulling each other to the center, and that's kind of our sweet spot. And sometimes it, you know, veers on either side of it. But really interesting things seem to happen when we make music.
I enjoy the albums, and it's great. It's because it's nice to hear that the thought process as a listener, because you don't hear that, and hearing it afterwards, you go back and listen to it, you're like, oh, like it gives a different perspective, you know, which is always fun as a music fan to hear the thought process of it. And because in this field that you're in, there are a lot more projects, and I think it's healthier for artists that are creative. Some artists don't; they just want to be, you know. I'm not even making a dig. Like American Idol, they like just get a song, even if they don't write it, they just want, they're performers, is what they are. Yeah. Some people are both. Some people are just creative songwriters. And if you're a creative songwriter, and then you're stuck in a genre where you're just not able to write new albums all the time or work with other people, it's soul crushing.
Yeah. No, we're both people who make a lot of music, and Marco is unstoppable. I mean, he's kind of in it. I mean, I thought I had I don't want to call it an obsession, but I thought that my sort of routines around music were already, you know, pretty locked in, but he's amazing at that. I mean, he's just like, he has a real drive and an ability to lock in to things, which is also very inspiring to me. But I'm at a place in terms of multiple projects where I occasionally get asked to do things, or, you know, maybe start something or try something out. And my curiosity is such that I have such a hard time saying no, because I just always I wonder what it would sound like with those people in the room. But at the same time, I'm also realizing that I only have so much time and so much interest to really focus on the things that I really want to move forward. And so it's becoming a quality over quantity situation, where it's like there are tons of things I would love to do, but when you get into it, it's like, okay, well, everybody's got their own lives, their own schedules.
Right.
How far out do you see it? Is it a one-time thing? Is it a multiple year plan? I mean, I didn't used to think that way. It used to just be like, yeah, whatever, and just kind of wander around. But I as you get deeper into career and just lifestyle changes and stuff, you have to consider how much is really going to prioritize your time. So the thing that I'm really excited about with McStine and Minnemann is that we kind of went into it in a, you know, a loose kind of, let's try a few songs and just see what happens thing. And we really locked into something that we both feel has a lot of potential to really grow. And we played a couple of live gigs in early May on something called Cruise to the Edge, which is a big progressive rock.
Everybody I keep talking to talks about it. I missed it. I'm terrified of the ocean and cruise ships, because even before COVID, God forbid somebody gets, like, you know, some kind of bug and the whole boat's hanging over the edge or in the bathroom or whatever. And I'm like, oh. But then these cruises have been awesome lately.
Well, I did come home with COVID, so that did happen, and a lot of other did as well. But I will say, only because it wasn't, as far as I know, nobody was seriously ill.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have traded the experience, because we finally got to to play live, and yeah, it was really what we needed, I think, to see the bigger picture.
Hmm.
When you're making albums in isolation and during the quarantine, it was a huge sort of distraction from the outside world, and it was a very inspiring time in some ways. But I think until you put music in front of people in a room, or in an open air
Yeah,
situation, it's that's how you really know if you're
if it
if you're
work, and if
doing
the songs work too. I mean,
exactly.
well, it's interesting because it feels like with that you have, well, your solo stuff is a little bit more laid back, so it could be more of a like a nightclub. It can play a different atmosphere.
Mhm.
Marco's a different type of atmosphere. It could almost be a different fan base. You know what I mean? And now
Yeah.
so those are your probably your two biggest main things you have focused on right now. But then you're gonna add a third piece in now, touring and Porcupine Tree. Are you like how are you gonna keep that going? Because you have some really great songs as it is. So I mean, how do you find a balance of it? Because Porcupine Tree is awesome. I love them,
Yeah.
but you also want to keep your solo stuff too, and your other stuff. You want still got to keep your soul without being part of the machine.
Sure.
You,
Sure.
you know, you know.
Well, thank you for saying that about the songs. I would say this, getting the call for Porcupine Tree, uh, obviously it immediately sort of changed my world in terms of
Totally.
uh, my responsibilities and priorities. And I'm super honored to be a part of that story for this upcoming tour and this new album that they've put out. I think the album's great,
Yeah.
and I have my own history with the band just purely as a fan.
Hmm.
My age has to come into perspective here because I'm 34, and 20 years ago, In Absentia came out, which was the record that a lot of people discovered
Yep.
them on, and
Right.
that's when Gavin Harrison joined the band. So yeah, I was basically 15 when I bought that record, and I was a full-time gigging musician. I was already, like I said, I had already released albums of my own, but just I hadn't broken into the sort of world of musicians that I now
But do you do that right
work
when you're rehearsing with them? You're like, oh wow, this is a song I play. I remember hearing this when I was 15, guys.
on.
When you
Yeah,
rehearse with them, no, no, give them a hard
no, but
time.
seriously, it is a little bit of a surreal experience. We've only rehearsed we did a week in April, and
Hmm.
obviously with the tour coming up, I'll be seeing those guys very soon. But it was definitely, yeah, one of those things where I'd be closing my eyes, playing the tunes, paying attention to what I need to do, but then also just I'm listening to you know Stephen Wilson, Gavin Harrison, Richard Barbieri in my ears, and I'm like, wow, what is happening right now? It's very sort of out of body
As a fan and a
experience.
musician, I think it's going to add to you because I think when you get done with this, I'm looking forward to hearing your next solo piece after being in a band with these guys because every time you're with somebody different,
Yeah,
it adds to your quill or whatever your
yeah,
paintbrushes. And obviously, these guys are it's a loaded stack of talent, all of them, And I can't escape an interview lately without something that Steve Wilson hasn't, remixed or redone, better
right.
version of. I'm talking to Jethro Tull, I'm talking to Fisher, like I'm talking everyone I talk to,
Yeah,
Ryan Stolt, like everyone. He's done a remix lately.
yeah.
So just by proxy, the stuff that you could learn, experience on a new adventure that'll bleed over into your solo stuff, it's gonna be kind
Oh,
of
for
cool.
sure. No, it's great, and and I'm going to get back to your initial question, but uh, it is it's a great opportunity to sort of take all of these interests and things that I already do as a musician, as a writer, player, singer, and kind of bring them all together for a very specific role, which is through the Porcupine Tree music. I think Stephen and I have, as I'm discovering, we have so many mutual uh, core influences
Hmm.
that even though he himself has been an influence on the things that I've done, again, because I like Porcupine Tree, they're a part of that generation of new music
Absolutely, it was.
that I grew up.
a footstep of thing. It'd be interesting.
Yeah.
So you could be influencing him when you were influenced by him. So he's like re-influencing himself, is what it's happening.
We're caught in some sort of
Yeah,
strange feedback loop.
some metaverse or something.
Exactly. Because I grew up with a big collection of, you know, classic progressive music, hard rock, blues rock. My dad was
I
very,
hear Yes in it, right? Like I hear some Yes influence,
yeah.
and not in the sound when I say it. I hear it in being recently in the X amount of years playing guitar and stuff and songwriting, and hearing it in the something in the songwriting. I hear it,
Mm,
the availability
right.
to use other notes and not be restrained by going to
Sure.
the next typical. Well, it would make sense in this scale to go here. You're like, yeah, but maybe not.
Yeah,
I feel that kind of influence, not in, oh, this sounds like a Yes album, because nothing sounds like a Yes album. You know what I mean?
exactly.
And nothing
Yeah.
used to. But
No.
the songwriting, the yeah, something about the freedom of the writing feels very similar when I listen to you, and if I listen to Yes or something.
Well, thank you. I mean, a huge influence. They're actually the first band I ever saw live. I saw them with Trevor Rabin in 1995, just about a week after my sixth birthday.
Wow.
So yeah, I was very fortunate that I had parents who were really into music. My dad specifically, and I grew up around his music collection. He also had a great sort of VHS collection of just rare concerts and
Oh,
things that you
nice.
have to get at trade shows. The stuff that became YouTube, but
Right.
pre-YouTube.
I get that.
So I mean, I was constantly absorbed in that stuff, and by the time I was able to start going to shows with progressive rock in particular, all of the classic bands were sort of back in from like 1994 to 96. So between the ages of 6 and 8, I saw Yes, Jethro Tull, ELP, King Crimson on the Thrack tour. So I mean, those things, even though the memories of them are hazy because it was so long ago, the impact that
Yeah.
has and what it did for my just my musical vocabulary.
Right.
I'm not really much of a theory guy, but my ears have developed to sort of want to seek out those kind of melodies
Right.
and stuff that you're talking
I mean,
about.
I mean, if you think about it, you could probably sit down right now, or probably a long time ago, we could sit down and listen to every music and be like, pretty much everything's been written. You could say
Sure.
every pop song's actually been written by the Beatles if you really want to get down to it. But
Yeah.
but then you take that, you peel it back a little bit, and you go, all right. Once somebody hears something and how they interpret it, it's not the same guitar pedal, the same notes. Like, how do you interpret that song? And you're like, I don't even know how you got that out of that because you do not sound like Yes. As an example, just easy example. But I hear songwriting similarities in how I explained it. So it's how you reinterpret stuff. It's not you becoming that. So then it's almost its new thing again because it's
Yeah.
re-extrapolating it to something different. So
Yeah.
it's making itself almost like a beehive. Like it's just making more on top
Yeah.
of it from that one piece.
It's the
Your
only
dad's
way
mind must be blown by where you are right now.
what's that?
Your dad's mind must have been blown as your career just kept going on and on.
Yeah, he sadly he passed about 5 years ago.
I'm sorry.
But thank you. But no, there's no doubt that the even then the trajectory of there were a lot of full circle things, like bands that he took me to see, and musicians that over time I would had started to work with and record with.
Hmm.
So those were constantly, huge things for him, and he would be, I don't know, blown away by, I think, both the McStine and Minnemann records and this Porcupine Tree thing. But yeah, it's great. I have his music collection, steps from my
That's quite a gift to have then, huh?
yeah. It's always that's always with me, which is
Yeah.
great. But man, I don't know, like 10 minutes ago, you had asked about prioritizing
Yeah.
the different projects. And I think, something like Porcupine Tree kind of coming in and taking priority for the time being, because
It has to
I
be. You're
I
grown
don't
up.
know where that's going ultimately, but that's where it is right now. It's very, very clear lines of what the tour is, and and what the responsibility is, and what the opportunity is to really bring my character to that music, and obviously play in front of a lot of
I
people that,
agree. You know, you
yeah,
can always do your soul stuff without losing your stuff. But
yeah,
this
yeah,
opportunity, this is a huge opportunity, not just because of like if they're commercially they're more a little viable.
sure.
It's who you have in the band
Hmm.
to work with is its own gift and its own
Absolutely. Yeah.
things that you will learn or work with and establish in your as your life goes on. So I mean, and also as a grown up, it is important to have a good gig as a working musician. Let's be honest, you know, what I mean? And name recognition does help. You know,
Well, I know you've had Mike Keneally on,
I have.
and Mike, I just adore him both as a person, obviously as a musician, just incredible. But look at his career. I mean, that's just one guy. I mean, I think unless you sort of land the thing, or you become the thing that just kind of takes everything else out of the equation, and your own music becomes your sole priority and your sole income. I mean, that's one thing.
No, you're
But
right. He's an example, perfect example. Or Adrian, I'm sorry, I may step over you. Adrian Ballou is just on too.
yeah.
He was just on. He's a couple weeks ago. He's releasing or did his 25th album.
Hmm.
And he's also doing some stuff for David Bowie. So he's done stuff for David Bowie, Zappa.
Of
I
course.
mean, another person who's you go on. These are also great identities to have you with, but
Right.
you can also go on and you know what I mean. You just got to keep moving things around.
Well, and I also just love a lot of different bands and musicians that, if given the opportunity to work with,
Yeah,
I would jump at that chance. I mean, right now it's Porcupine Tree, and for what they do, I can't think of another group of people making that kind of music that I would really, want to be a part
that
of that.
phone call must have been like Christmas and your birthday together. Like,
I think, yeah. So, I mean, that's great, but man, if Neil Finn called me up and said, "Hey, I hear you're really good, can you come play some Crowded House tunes?" I'd be there in a
yeah.
heartbeat. It's like
Look, yeah,
there are
he is
just
awesome.
there are certain things that you can't deny.
Right. But you got to
When
keep
they,
growing as a musician. I
yeah,
mean, if you actually have you heard the newest Crowded House album?
I
And
love it.
I love it. And it sounds like they're straddling each side of the fence because they're not. There's some newer sounds in there, but
Yep.
they're not forced over the older sounds. They didn't give up their old sound and the old melody. And I think it
Hmm.
helps that he's got family in the band because nothing gets better for vocals than having
Yeah.
your children and your voices together. You know.
Oh, it's great. And Mitchell Froome is back, so
Yes. Yes. Yep.
all of that kind of textural stuff is back into the band. So yeah, I
And
mean,
he did Fleetwood Mac too. Probably one of
yeah,
the best albums they've done. Well, other albums are always good. You know, that album holds as good. You know, might not have the same hits as before because it's a different time,
yeah.
but it's as good an album as the first big ones. And after doing that album, he took a break for a minute, hot minute, and then he played with another different band, Fleetwood Mac, which is totally. I wouldn't have seen that coming,
No, no, yeah,
right? But so that's what I'm saying. You see an opportunity, no
yeah,
matter who you are. It's a great left turn.
yeah. And actually, just I remember listening to an interview with Neil Finn about that in particular, and he described getting the call from Mick Fleetwood to maybe join and come down and jam and stuff, and how he wasn't sure. He was kind of conflicted about it for about 24 hours, and basically, like, yeah, his wife and kids were like, "Come on, you're not going to go sing with, at least see what it's like to go sing with Stevie Nicks."
Yeah,
And once he was able to sort of reframe it and not blow it up into this huge thing, he was like, "Well, yeah, of course I'd like to have a sing with Fleetwood Mac. Like, why wouldn't you?"
I mean, his vocals and his playing. I mean,
Yeah,
I think the comparison was a fear. I mean, they've programmed so many times with Lindsay, and Lindsay's a great player. So to get involved in that and want to stay on the outside of that and not be involved in that little divorcey thing going on there as an
yeah,
artist, you know, we've already seen it with David Roth and Sammy Hagar and stuff. I mean, that kind of blew the doors open for everyone else to kind of come in and do that. At first, it was oh my god, there's two camps, and there still
right,
is some people.
of
You
course,
know,
yeah.
I'll be honest. I like old Dave and pretty much all Sammy. So.
Yeah.
Dave can't sing anymore. He's a little wacky, and he's a little wacky at this point too. So
But yeah, it's you know, the opportunity to kind of play with new people, put yourself in a new context, learn a lot of new things. All that kind of stuff gets refiltered
Hmm.
uh, into future work, and I suppose it could also be a bit of a curse if people are sort of expecting that the next thing you do is going to sound like it's informed by that, but it will naturally
I
just
don't
be
think
in there.
so. I mean, well, just don't read the forums.
Yeah,
Anything, any actually, there's a forum. It gets super intense. Like I interviewed Ian Anderson, and I was talking about the other singer, the guitar player he had for a while after Martin, and everyone's like, it's not it because it's not Martin. It's a solo album. It's this and that. Like, and everyone just gets into the minutia of fighting about it. I'm like, I don't know. It's got his voice on it, and it's got the flute. And I have another one. I probably have a 12. I don't even tell my albums I have him too. I'm a big fan, and I love Martin, but I also like his other guitar player.
hmm
And I like all of them. It's just different versions. And I say to people all the time, you can't go to work. I mean, you're going to go to work, same job for 20 years. Odds are there's going to be a lot of people coming in and out. And the job is still going to be done the same, pretty much. Maybe a little different.
hmm
So to expect a band to never change,
yeah.
sometimes it's even better. I've seen some bands have lost their best singer and then they'll come with a new singer. And it's like new energy. And the band's actually
Oh, of
better.
course. Yeah.
So when people get caught up in that too much, it's like, come on, people.
Yeah.
Just enjoy the music.
Exactly. But I get it too, because people have memories attached to certain people, and change is hard for most humans. I mean, just at a core level. But I've always found myself sort of embracing it, and that that just change in general has allowed me to keep exploring and keep trying things, and to not stay in the safety zone all the time.
I think that's what well, the irony is as a musician to be in the prog world, right? It's all about change. So the fact that the fans don't like change is a terrible irony
It is an
because
irony.
because an artist is a prog artist, you're like, that's all I do,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and but they still see it in a different way, and it's not a knock on me, but it's like I don't know, man. I look in the mirror now, myself, and picture myself 20 years ago or 30 years ago, not the same dude.
Oh
I don't
no,
expect. I don't
no.
even think the same way. I couldn't.
Yes.
And then once I do that self reflection, and you think about an artist like a band, you're like, well, if they can still do it and they like that, oh, that's awesome. But if they don't, that's awesome. Do you know
Yeah,
what I'm saying? It's like they're still doing stuff. Good for you.
exactly.
If you don't like it,
Yeah.
you don't like it. You still have to listen to it. You can still remember that version without taking the other person down. And I'm hoping with you, this opens more doors. I hope some people that we may not have known you from Marco or like.
Mhm.
I mean, like I said, Marco's thing is how I got into you, and then I backwards went into your Bandcamp and all your solo stuff. So
Right.
that was my way, and that was my gateway drug, right? Marco's the gateway drug. I said it. So maybe the work you do with Porcupine Tree will be somebody else will be like, oh, and then it's like, oh, Marco Minion, oh, the solo, like, and also like it's going to
Yeah.
expand, and other artists that didn't know you, they'll meet on tour, you meet here, and like, oh, I liked him in Porcupine, I like the sound, I didn't even think about that. Oh, just because you'll be visually out there, and
Yeah.
sonically in concerts, and who knows where things could go, you know?
Absolutely. No, it's all very exciting to me,
Yeah,
and the thing is that the work that I've been doing this whole time, it's just it's just there for people to discover. So I mean, whether that's today or that's 2 months from now or 2 years, as long as I'm feeling engaged in the work and feel passionate about the things that I'm pursuing and moving forward, then when opportunities come along, or yeah, I mean, it's always just there are multiple roads to take, but for
yeah.
me, there's the center point of everything is just like, is this something that I really want to do? And because I think we're all looking to avoid the things we don't want to do. And
Right.
I'm very, very fortunate that when I think about the people that I interact with now, and the sort of irons in the fire, it's all stuff that even if I just had to do one of those things, I would be incredibly
Right. That's,
grateful for.
yeah.
But having a small sort of group of things that I can sort of bounce back and forth between is amazing. I mean, I just played a couple of solo gigs, like acoustic opening for. I did one gig opening for Marillion last weekend
Oh, cool.
at one of their weekend conventions up in Montreal, and it was very important for me a couple of years ago, 2019 now, where I sort of had this epiphany that I really needed to develop a truly solo repertoire, so that if all else went away, I can get in my car and go play a gig somewhere and show up with an acoustic guitar and some pedals and play a set of songs. And that decision kind of carried through to the end of 2019 when I toured with the Pineapple Thief, which is another band that Gavin Harrison plays
so
with.
good. It's so good.
Yeah, and that was like, trial by fire. I had worked up to that moment, for the entire year, essentially, just kind of prepping for it, and doing 20 dates totally changed my whole perspective as a singer, as a writer, as a performer. Because again, it was that thing. It's like you're one guy stepping out on stage. There's nothing to fall back on, and you're the opening act, so nobody is technically there to see you. And who are you in that moment? How do you connect? And thankfully, it was really good from the first show. But I mean, the amount of growth for me personally from day one to a month later was something that you can't put a price on, that kind of experience. And that led directly into the McStine and Minnemann records, and then now playing live again in Porcupine Tree. So it's all a part of this thread that kind of gets carried through, based on things like luck and timing, but just artistic chances that I've taken. Because at any point I could have just kind of sat back, I suppose, and said, I think I'll stop striving now. I think I'll just stop and be comfortable. But I'm not really able to do that. There's something that I'm always constantly working towards, and it seems to be working out.
It's pretty awesome. I mean, and so people that are in my audience that may not know who you are, they've checked out my Marco one. I've had people come on and harass me. It's a mixed audience. And that's the whole goal of the show, is to have all different art. I listen to so much different types of music, and I want the show to reflect all the artists I listen to, all the types of music. Like, remember growing up, you listen to be like a show, and you're like, oh, I don't know who the artist is, just because they're being interviewed, and also opens your mind to them, even if you're not your thing. And then maybe later on you go back to it. It's about opening doors for people and connecting them to check your stuff out. So the links for Bandcamp will be there, your web page, which really kind of goes back to Bandcamp. Obviously, you're getting ready to do Porcupine Tree, and that's awesome. And hopefully more solo stuff, right?
Yeah, we're working on the third McStine and Minnemann right now. Marco is out with the Aristocrats. They just started a tour a couple days ago. And when his tour ends, my tour with Porcupine Tree begins. So it'll be important for me to kind of get a bunch of work done between now and September on that. Basically, everything's written. It just has to be fleshed out arrangement-wise. And so I think that's going to be great. I don't see that coming out by the end of the year, just with the way things are. I would assume maybe early 23.
As much as I want to hear it, the idea of you two both being on tour and then coming back to record will probably be like so much energetic and so much fresher in your chops. You know what I'm saying? It'll be like you're in a different room when you mix it up, then you come back to it again. You're looking at it with fresh eyes or fresh fingers.
Yeah, both. But yeah, we've got some really interesting material, I think. I mean, it sounds like us. I mean, that's the funny thing, is the way we headed into it was so innocent. There was really no discussion about style. It was really just like, send me a few songs. And my mindset toward the end of 2019 was more geared towards like heavy trio rock kind of stuff. So the first album kind of reflects this mix of like hard rock and sort of like power pop stuff. Very short, punchy songs, and that kind of became the template. But it wasn't really discussed. It just kind of ended up there. And then the second record, we just immediately went into it, and I think we were getting more comfortable, and it was also sort of hitting that mark of the pandemic of the first year, where it was like, okay, well, I guess we're going to be here for a while. So I think the musical ideas got a little nuttier and a little bit more sort of expansive. And so that record is this sort of beautifully chaotic roller coaster that I think when you're first hit with it, it's like, man, I don't know where any of this is going. You have to just kind of go along for the ride. But after several listens, if you give it the time,
I can see, yeah, if you're not used to it, but like being a fan of Marco's prior,
yeah,
I always walk in with no expectations into the party with him.
yeah,
So to me, it wasn't like I'm like, well, I expect the unexpected. You know what I mean?
yeah,
If he did like something normal, I'd be like, when's it gonna happen? So,
yeah.
but to me, I was already jumped into the album full steam ahead.
Yeah. So I think this next record will also reflect just what it is that we do when we make music together, and it'll always be full of surprises as well.
Cool.
Just naturally. And then as far as the solo thing, I'm starting to conceptualize that as well. I can't really prioritize it right now, but I have been writing and kind of thinking about some of the past work that I've done. There was an album I did called Blank, which came out in 2016, and it didn't have any press. It just kind of came and went. But it's a record that I'm still very proud of, because at the time I had kind of thrown out a lot of my tendencies when it came to arranging and producing music, to really focus on this kind of ambient acoustic singer-songwriter approach. I stripped a lot of things away. There's like no drums on the record, and really just focused on the songs and the textures that I could create. And I'm kind of sensing that the next thing I do from a solo perspective will probably reflect some of that characteristic, mixed with some new approaches as well. Because I'm constantly, I find I have this pendulum that swings between like kind of minimalist, just wanting to play acoustic guitar and sing a song and have it just stand on its own without anything else. I'm wanting that to be the core of a lot of what I do now, so that if it works there, I know that when the pendulum swings to the sort of maximalist side, the details will be really fun. Yeah. But I know that, especially in progressive rock, I think one of the stereotypes, and it's, sadly for good reason, is just a lot of times I don't find that there's a song at the core of things. There's a lot of really fun parts, and there's a lot of great playing and all this kind of stuff. But it's easy to overlook the components that just like are a song that I want to hear.
Right.
And I think a lot of the classic bands, just because you've name checked them a few times, like a band like Yes, when they peaked, or when they were doing the best version of what it is that they did, I think there's always a song, and there's always like these beautiful melodies and memorable parts. So I'm always trying to find that balance, I think. Because mentioning Neil Finn, it's like if I could write a song half as good as that guy, start there, and then you can fill in the details all day long. Yeah. But when you strip it down to one instrument and one voice, is it still something that can work? And so that's kind of been more of my priority lately, just thinking about writing a song from start to finish that I could just play. It's just me sitting here, and then filling it in later. So yeah,
that's good. But I like that. That's Perfect. I mean, as a fan, I'm looking forward
Yeah.
to it. Well, I want to thank you for coming on. Like I said, this has been very exciting. You got a lot of projects going on, and we're going to have you back probably, I don't know, when you fall. I don't know. We'll see when your album's ready. Your next album's ready. you
Yeah,
know?
let's talk when, after the tour has become a little bit of a memory,
Memory?
and when there's some new music
Yeah,
next year. It'd be
that'd be
great to
awesome.
catch up
I'm
a
on,
bit.
and we'll talk about it because I'm looking forward to hearing how the influences have changed, how your perspective from today has changed as a player, and all the new things that are going to happen to you between now and then re-recording the music that you have, like how it's going to be interpreted again. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
Will it stay the same? Will it change? Yeah, because it could change again a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see how it develops and talking about it.
Yeah,
So
we're talking, it's July, so yeah, I'll be a very different person,
yeah,
come December.
that's awesome. So people check them out, and I want to thank you for being on the show, man. It's been
Thank you,
awesome.
Sean. Appreciate it.
Thank you.